I'm Carla, Philip's sister, and I'm really grateful to see her. My brother Michael should be up here instead, but I'll never let him live it down. Okay. I am going to talk about another part of Philip, obviously, because I'm family. I thought my brother was special. I guess that's probably a question that folks might ask. I think Michael and I both knew Philip was pretty special. Of course, I think of him as, when I think of Philip now, I know it seems very strange because you all know him in so many other different types of phases of his life, but I was his big sister and I knew him as a little boy with tousled hair and a crooked smile. And he had a little stain here on his side of his mouth. And he was always the little brother that I tried to take care of, along with Michael, who needed a lot of care as well. No. But I think it really hit me in the 80s about my brother. When I also had another son, who's an older son who couldn't make it today. He's back in Boston, because I have grandchildren as well. And his name is David. But he was a teenager in the 80s, and we were there visiting our parents in Oklahoma, because that's where we were from. And we were having some sort of family gathering in the 80s, and we came down, and I was trying to explain to my 16-year-old, David, that Philip was a musician, and of course he was into the rock music of the 80s at that time, and rap too, I think, was his big interest. And he said, "What kind of music does he play, Mom?" And I said, "Classical guitar." And I went, "Classical guitar? Oh, okay." And I could tell he was like dreading, okay, I'm gonna sit there and try to appear really interested, and this is gonna be very, very boring, and I'm gonna somehow try to get through it. And Philip sat at that time in the 80s also, on the floor with his guitar, and was just playing, I can't even remember which piece he was playing at that time. And David, my 16-year-old at that time, was sitting there, and I turned and looked at David, and I saw his jaw drop, literally. And he was just mesmerized by Philip's playing. And that's when it struck me. Here's, a teenager who doesn't appreciate classical music at that time, and he was just mesmerized by the spirit and the creativity that was coming out of the guitar and my brother. And I think that's when it hit me that, oh my God. I think somebody else mentioned that here as well, David Cronin possibly. And I've talked to many folks over the last few months since my brother's death, and there's a general feeling that when my brother played, it was as if something had stopped. And I think that really came through. But I wanted to bring up something else with that as a background. I think I never realized another aspect of my brother, which was the biggest gift that he gave to me, which is when he was dying in the hospital, and he was in a coma. And that's the great gift that my brother has given me, because when he was in the hospital dying, so many people, many of you came to the hospital, stood by his bedside, played music, hoping that he was going to come out of the coma, touched him, talked to him, told him all kinds of stories, shared your experiences with my brother. as he was lying there, and I couldn't believe it. I was overwhelmed by all of you, many of you. I was amazed by the outpouring of connectivity that he had to so many of you. And on top of that, I received phone calls. Actually, to this day, I'm receiving phone calls from people who are calling and saying things like, "You don't know me. I'm so-and-so. I knew your brother Philip back in the 60s or the 70s, or I've known him for 30 or 40 years. I was part of his life," and they would just go on and on and on, and it just became incredibly clear to me the greatest gift that Philip has given me is all of you. All of you. Absolutely incredible. I'm overwhelmed by how much he has touched so many people. I thought it was his music.
It was definitely part of it.
It was his whole being. And it's such a revelation. And I'm so appreciative and so grateful. I can't thank you enough. And that's what I wanted to share with you today.
I'd like to invite Enrique to play for us.
I'm going to say a few words first. Thank you. Good evening. Enrique Navarro. Some of you may know me as Rick. Phil and I met at Santiago de Compostela at the Segovia Master Classes. And I felt somebody's studying me as I was standing in line. And I turned around and it was Philip Rosheger. And we introduced each other, ourselves to each other, and did the master class. I don't know if that's the year he won. No, I don't think so.
He won 71.
Yeah, he's 71.
And he won 72.
I came back 2 years later, and Phil and I were living in an apartment with some other guitarists, and a flat in Alicante, and we were studying Jose Tomas. And what I learned from, well, Phil and I were the same age, but I thought he was my upperclassman because he was so profound. And I learned great things about fingering from him and how exactly one needs to be and should be. And by the way, olive oil is something that we all share for the fingernails. Okay, and that's something that we got mainly from Jose Tomas. Phil won, and I was in the audience as he won. And I won the next year, and he was in the audience as I won. And I remember there was some polemic about the year I won. And Phil said, "No, you definitely won." And I knew I won. And I was happy to get it from him, because he was my upper class. And then David Russell won the next year. So at any rate, we didn't talk to each other for years, and we're in Dallas at the Guitar Society, and we thought, well, let's put the year together. And with my colleague Tom Johnson at UNT, he discussed, well, let's bring Phil in. And so he and I spearheaded that, and that's, everybody's talking about, Texas when we played in Dallas. We were just trying to see if there was a way to get some concerts in Oklahoma or nearby, but as always, guitar societies do not communicate with each other, but that's another topic. He gave a great concert, and I went to visit him in Tom Johnson's house before the concert, and I was aghast that he was smoking pot. And I thought, how's he going to do this? Well, he just gave a great concert. Phil was a great concert player and the greatest communicator. about once a year, he'd call me. And, you know, guys talk about, you know, their ex-wives, their current wives, their girlfriends. We talk about Ramirez guitars and who has what. And, you know, we were tracking those things and, you know, goofy guitar talk. And then the last time I talked to him was the night before his operation. So I'd like to play a piece by Andres Segovia. It's Oración, which is prayer, and he wrote this for Manuel Ponce. But since we both met in Santiago de Compostela
Perfect.
at the Segovia master classes, I'd like to offer